4 years ago, I revisited one of the punks I had interviewed as part of my research. We can call her Sarah. And I was sitting in a small warehouse from where Sarah ran her online punk store, watching as she was putting orders together, gathering t-shirts, records, and hoodies, putting them into boxes so as to be shipped off to awaiting customers. Punk really made you into an entrepreneur, I said. She looked at me and said angrily, "What the hell do you mean by that?" Holding up my palms, I explained that she just had to take a look around. I pointed to the warehouse, I pointed to her screen printing equipment, I pointed to the stacks of records and clothes. Punk had made all of that possible. She had no external support, no loans, no business degree. Wasn't that kind of amazing? She looked at me again, said with a smile, "Erik, that's not an entrepreneur. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for punk." I've spent half my life researching subcultures. Punk, graffiti, and even amateur detectives seeking to solve crime on the internet. What interests me is how these groups come to establish themselves as different from the rest of society. How they come to perceive deviance and distance, and sometimes even crime, as something positive. Still, what I want to talk about is similarity. How these groups work to integrate participants who feel lost, who feel abandoned. And in so doing, I will point to how subcultures work to provide an alternative arena whereby participants can grow, empower themselves, and develop skills and competences. We tend to overlook that last part. We're too busy worrying about how subcultures look, how they sound, or what they do. But let us start with the attraction. Imagine you're 14 years old. And as many teenagers, you've experienced the hard way that popularity in school is at its best arbitrary and at its worst absolutely incomprehensible. You feel like a failure. You're not that good in school. You're not that good in sports either. You don't have that many friends. You don't get invited to parties. Some of the older kids make fun of you and your parents don't seem to understand. No one seems to understand. You feel like you don't belong anywhere. Then imagine that someone presents a solution to that. A friend lets you in on a secret. They do graffiti and no one knows about it. They show you how to come up with your own tag. They teach you the rules as to how and where to do it. It's fun, it's exciting, yet it's simple and straightforward. It's something that you can become good at. And quite early, you realize the existential aspect of it. Contrary to school, your status and repetition in graffiti is not based on who you are, who you know, what you look like, or your age. It's solely based on what you do, how you do, and where you do it. Most participants will not even get to know you. They will know you through your tag. You become what you write. But you also become proud of not fitting in. And part of the magic of subcultures is that they turn the tables so that not being like everyone else becomes something good. And they do so through adding superiority and distance to those who are not part of this collective secret. Those who do not understand. Those who should not be able to understand. Those kids in school who teased you, your parents, or those friends of yours who excluded you. They're the problem, not you. You're better than they are. You're different. You don't need their approval. As part of this outside, as parents, for example, we tend to react to this established distance, disagreeing with it, arguing against it, condemning it, which is rather unfortunate because a public condemnation just makes it so much easier to maintain this distance. The harder it becomes to do graffiti on a train, the more attractive it becomes within the subculture, much like forbidden fruit. Still, the real magic of subcultures lies in what this established distance enables in terms of learning. Let us return to Sarah, the punk non-entrepreneur. She wasn't that good in school. In fact, she dropped out of school when she was 16. Still, through being punk and doing punk, she's come to acquire some of the very same competences she failed in school. Given the needed distance to the outside, Sarah and her friends have had to solve problems themselves. In order to remain independent, they've had to establish their own venues, their own networks, their own fanzines, and in Sarah's case, her own business. And in so doing, they have learned about economy, budgeting, and planning. Organizing their own shows and festivals have taught them welding, carpentry, and cooking. Through reading and writing fanzine articles and song lyrics, they've improved their linguistic skills in English, Swedish, and German. And through their political interest, they've come to read academic books in gender theory, sociology, and law. Not because a teacher told them to, not because a parent told them to, but because they felt that there was something they had to do as part of being punk. I once met with a self-taught graphic designer. We can call him Alex. Self-taught, as he had spent most of his teenage days designing and sketching letters as part of doing graffiti. Then a friend asked him to do a logo for his band. Then a second friend asked, and a third, and then Alex eventually landed a trainee position at an ad agency. And now, here he was a couple of years later, getting offered a job at a large, prestigious city firm. The manager showed him around, the offices were great, the pay even greater. Still, warned the manager, there will be a lot of work and a lot of stress. What kind of stress? Asked Alex. I mean, we might be given an assignment by a client that we need to present a solution to within 2 hours. Oh, yeah, I see, said Alex. When he told me this story, he said, Erik, when I do graffiti on the Stockholm subway, I have 5 minutes. From the moment the driver leaves the train, I have 5 minutes to jump the fence, approach the train, sketch out all of my letters, then fill them out, then add background, do highlights, do the outlines, then sign it, all while keeping track on what is happening around me so that I don't get surprised by the guards. Then I have to jump back over the fence and get out of view before the train leaves. All of that in 5 minutes. That's stressful to me. Imagine what I can do in 2 hours. That's eons of time. And of course, he didn't tell the manager this. It wasn't until he told me this story that he realized how much he had actually learned from doing graffiti besides signing letters. Similar to Sarah, he had learned about creativity and flexibility and performing under pressure just because the activity itself demanded it. And every time I present my research on this, there's always someone in the audience who comes up to me afterwards, a middle manager, a youth worker, a teacher, a business owner, and come up to me to tell me how much the subculture they were once part of has meant to who they are and how they approach things today. We're so eager to have those who deviate to fall back in line, then we miss everything they have learned from being out of line. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't react or that we shouldn't sanction some of these activities. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't dismiss what participants have learned from doing these activities in the first place. Now we see to what people are capable of rather than solely focusing on their exams. If you're 18 years old and you're part of an organized drug trade, regardless of how provocative that is, regardless of how dangerous that is, doing so successfully over time requires knowledge about the police, about the legal system, but also some substantial skills in stress management, self-control, and problem solving. As a society, we have a lot to gain from capturing such competences, from recognizing them as valid, but also offering possibilities so as to implement them in another context. And I think we really have to, because can we afford not to? And of course, I'm not recommending anyone to start selling drugs or do graffiti on a train for that matter. But if we look beyond the activity, we can learn from how subcultures work to activate and motivate individuals of all ages, from all backgrounds, including those who have failed school, and how they work to collectively establish alternative arenas. Participants can develop skills and competences based on their own interests, under their own circumstances, and in their own time. If we can learn to use distance proactively as a point of departure for processes of learning, if we can learn to at times let go of our demand of external control and order when validating learning, if we at times can allow for disorder to flourish, then subcultures can be used to include, integrate, and empower individuals who feel lost or excluded from society. If we can look beyond what subcultures do to what they accomplish, then we can help people realize what they are already capable of. Sarah, Alex, and hundreds of others whom I met during my research are proof of that potential. And yes, Sarah is probably right. She's not an entrepreneur in the sense that we have come to use the term. But maybe that says more about us than it says about her. Maybe we too should do things more for what they are and less for their material rewards. To be rather than to have. Thank you so much.